Did you know, if you continue living with minimal human connections, your hippocampus will shrink, your cognitive abilities can decline, and your risk of neurological disorders may skyrocket before you even notice symptoms. So how might you protect your brain? In this video, we'll reveal 5 powerful brain-protecting social habits that neurologists recommend for maintaining cognitive health as you age. Plus, stay until the end to learn about the 10-minute daily practice that can rebuild neural connections even if you've been isolated for years. Isolation number 1. Have you ever noticed how people who spend extended periods alone often appear to think differently than those with rich social lives? Intriguingly, what most consider a simple lifestyle choice is actually creating measurable structural changes in the brain's architecture. Why does prolonged isolation physically reshape the very organ responsible for our thoughts and feelings? Think of your brain like a muscle that atrophies without regular use. Social interaction is the exercise that keeps certain neural regions robust and functioning. It's quite mind-blowing to know that extended periods of isolation can literally shrink the prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for decision-making and complex cognitive behaviors. This phenomenon explains why Chuck Noland in Castaway gradually shifted from rational business executive to someone who personified a volleyball, as his isolation-induced brain altered his perception of reality. While temporary solitude can provide valuable reflection time, prolonged isolation triggers these structural changes that compound over time, weakening the brain's social processing centers. So what specific approach can protect your brain from this progressive neural deterioration? Try a brain preservation technique called social anchoring. This method maintains critical neural pathways even during periods when regular socializing isn't possible. To implement this practice, establish at least 3 meaningful social connections per week, whether through video calls, in-person meetings, or even structured group activities online. Remember, consistent social contact keeps neural networks intact. Isolation number 2. Have you ever wondered why elderly people who maintain active social lives often stay mentally sharper than their more isolated peers? Remarkably, the connection between social engagement and cognitive preservation extends far beyond mere correlation into direct causation. What exactly happens to our memory systems when we lack regular, meaningful human contact? Imagine your brain's memory networks as a complex highway system that requires regular traffic to maintain its structure. Without sufficient social interaction, certain exits and roadways begin to deteriorate from disuse. Interestingly, Dr. Emily Rogalski, a neuroscientist at Northwestern University, discovered that individuals with larger, more active social networks demonstrate significantly better episodic memory and slower cognitive decline compared to socially isolated counterparts. While some might argue that quiet solitude allows for deeper focus and memory consolidation, extended isolation actually accelerates the breakdown of hippocampal connections critical for both forming and retrieving memories. What specific memory-preserving routines can counteract these effects before cognitive decline becomes noticeable? Consider implementing a practice called memory scaffolding. This approach leverages social interaction to strengthen existing memory networks while building resistance against future deterioration. To activate this protective mechanism, engage in storytelling exchanges with others at least twice weekly. Sharing detailed personal narratives and actively listening to others' recollections reinforces neural pathways responsible for memory function. Remember, shared stories strengthen stored memories. Isolation number 3. Did you ever contemplate why certain neurological conditions seem to accelerate in people who live highly solitary lives? Surprisingly, as documented in the Journal of Neuroscience, what appears to be a simple correlation actually reveals a direct biological pathway through which social isolation primes the brain for specific pathologies. How does the absence of social contact create vulnerability to serious neurological conditions? Consider isolation as an invisible toxin that gradually inflames neural tissue. Similar to how environmental pollutants damage organs, social deprivation triggers inflammatory responses throughout the brain. Fascinatingly, prolonged isolation increases inflammatory biomarkers that directly correlate with higher rates of dementia, Alzheimer's disease, and Parkinson's development. This pattern appears vividly in the character of Norma Desmond in Sunset Boulevard, whose isolated existence in her mansion accelerates her mental deterioration. illustrating how separation from society creates perfect conditions for neurological decline. Though periods of solitude can provide mental clarity, chronic isolation creates a neuroinflammatory environment that degrades protective brain mechanisms and accelerates neurodegeneration. What specific anti-inflammatory approach might protect vulnerable neural tissues from isolation-induced damage? Try an inflammation reduction strategy called neural detoxification. This method combats the inflammatory processes triggered by social isolation before they can damage vulnerable brain regions. To activate this protective response, incorporate daily mindfulness meditation sessions lasting at least 10 minutes. Research shows this practice specifically reduces neuroinflammatory markers associated with isolation. Remember, mindfulness meditation neutralizes neural inflammation. Isolation number 4. Have you paid attention to how formerly isolated individuals sometimes appear to come back to life when reintegrated into social environments? Curiously, this visible transformation reflects actual neurobiological processes occurring at the cellular level within their brains. What determines whether isolation-induced damage becomes permanent or can be reversed? Think of your brain's neuroplasticity like a regenerative system with a specific time window, similar to how a broken bone must be set properly within a certain period to heal correctly. Remarkably, Dr. Julian Holt Lundstad, a professor of psychology and neuroscience at Brigham Young University, found that the brain retains significant recovery potential for approximately 18 to 24 months after isolation begins, after which certain changes become increasingly resistant to reversal. While many assume neural damage is permanent regardless of intervention timing, research indicates that prompt social reintegration within this critical window can stimulate impressive neural regeneration and functional recovery. What specific regenerative approach proved most effective within this crucial neuroplasticity window? Consider embracing a technique called neural reconnection. This approach strategically stimulates the brain's natural regenerative processes to reverse isolation-induced damage during the critical plasticity window. To maximize recovery potential, gradually increase social exposure by 25% each week, starting with low-pressure interactions and systematically building toward more complex social environments that challenge different neural systems. Remember, systematic social exposure rebuilds neural pathways. Isolation number 5. Here's the daily practice that can rebuild neural connections even if you've been isolated for years. Have you considered how certain social interactions seem more neurologically beneficial than others, even when time spent socializing is equal? Astonishingly, the brain responds differently to various types of social contact, with some forms triggering significantly more robust neural activity and protective benefits than others. Why do certain social experiences generate dramatically stronger brain-preserving effects than others of similar duration? Imagine your brain's social processing centers as specialized instruments that require specific types of stimulation, just as a piano needs actual key presses, not just proximity to music, to maintain its functionality. Remarkably, meaningful social connection that involves vulnerability and emotional exchange stimulates oxytocin production, which directly protects against neural degeneration at significantly higher rates than casual or superficial interactions. This phenomenon explains why Elio in Call Me By Your Name experiences profound neurological activation through his emotionally intimate summer relationship, demonstrating how vulnerable connection creates more powerful brain responses than routine social contact. While any social interaction offers some benefit, emotionally meaningful exchanges provide exponentially greater neuroprotective effects through distinct biological pathways. So what specific practice can systematically generate these high-impact neural benefits daily, even for those with limited social access? Try a connection-building ritual called deep bonding. This method activates the most powerful neuroprotective mechanisms through strategic, high-quality social interaction that maximizes neurological benefits. To harness this protective effect, schedule one 10-minute vulnerability exchange daily. Share something personally meaningful with someone you trust and actively listen to their response, creating reciprocal emotional engagement. For example, discussing your genuine hopes or concerns with a friend, family member, or even a supportive online community member triggers significant oxytocin release that directly protects neural tissue. Remember, depth of connection outweighs frequency of contact. If you're interested in learning more about self-discovery, then be sure to watch our video about loneliness epidemic and social isolation exposed to learn more about the power of you. See you there.